Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific North. Fresh from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
The sweet, sweet Mariners, baby. We're almost there.
15 days?
Yes, sir.
15 days till opening day. I've had a little bit of a reprieve from the podcast due to some reasons that we will get into in a little bit. But it's start of NFL free agency. The clock opened up and legal tampering period started on Monday, and there's been a flurry of moves, and this whole market has been super duper crazy. It always is during the legal tampering period, but you've seen a few guys that would typically be in the second, third waves getting deals during the legal tampering period. So it's been a little crazy. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Seahawks that were cut, that slash released, the guys that have signed deals elsewhere, guys that we've signed and or extended, re-signed or extended, and then some incoming free agents from other teams, and then talk about some targets that we still think are feasible for this squad. But before we do that, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that's had pneumonia for the last 2.5 weeks and is now finally healthy enough to record a podcast, maybe you're looking for a guy like me, your boy Coach Red. You can find me on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. And if you're looking for a guy that has, there's been a lot of guys that have signed in free agents see so far, correct? If you're looking for a
Yes.
guy that's had a laundry list of sicknesses about as long as the free agents that have signed, maybe you're looking for a guy like Cain.
Yes, I'm Kane. You can find me over on Twitter at Kane2406, on YouTube at Kane06, TikTok, Kane0624. Also, follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
First, I want to start off with some cuts that happen, and not really surprises. You kind of knew that the writing was on the wall based on the cap numbers. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and Will Dissly were all cut. Some dead money was accrued. Jamal Adams, I think, was more so a foregone conclusion. I I wouldn't have been shocked if they would have tried to extend Quandre Diggs and kind of throw a void year in there to move some of the money around, because although the turnover numbers haven't been there, especially this last year, they have been, and it would have been fun to see him in a Mike McDonald system, hanging it free. And although they didn't have any tight ends under contract except Will Dissly at the time of him being cut, he was a guy that the versatility was great. I think that his number was high based on his production, but his ability to be a blocking type tight end and give you something in the pass game and being a UW guy, always had a soft spot for Uncle Will, and was really hoping they were going to be able to do another thing like I thought with Quandre, potentially doing an extension, but at a smaller number to keep him around this team. Didn't happen though. Right. And he actually, out of the guys that they cut, he is the only guy that is signed. He signed early in the legal tampering period. I think it was 2 years, 8 mil to.
Pretty sure it was 3 years.
No, Parkinson was 3 years. We'll get to him. Uncle
they
Will
both
only
got
got
3
two
years,
for the
so,
Chargers, which going down there to help out with Justin Herbert and go be a do-all tight end. Good spot for him. Wish nothing for the best for old Uncle Will.
Yeah, same here. And to touch on the other cuts, I thought Quandre's time was coming to a close because he did have a really terrible first half. We can all sit there and we can all agree he was terrible. He couldn't wrap up tackles. People threw him off all the time, getting burned in coverage. And then it was like the last 5 games of the season, he really came on strong, really hitting people with force again. And being that ball hawk that we all loved to see out there, right? We traded a third for him a couple years ago?
Fifth.
Okay. Well, let's get over to the other guy. Oh my God. What wasted talent. Jamal Adams
I wouldn't
was,
say that
right?
Jamal Adams is wasted talent because the one thing that you can't really account for is injuries. And it's not, and especially when you look at some of the injuries that he's had, like the dude's so physically strong that he tore his entire quad.
Right.
That's so tough to do. You can't say that
Right.
he's a waste of talent. He's a guy that
It's
got hit with bad luck. It's like
well, I didn't say waste of talent. I said wasted
yeah,
talent.
it's not
There's
wasted talent because he
it's
was
just tough
injured.
because he how many games? What season did he play the most games? His first year?
Yes,
And then after that, it's been most of the season.
he was out. Correct.
With how much talent that was and how many first round picks we gave up for him. It's just tough because you know, if he could
This
have
isn't.
kept if he
I
could
know
have
that
kept the
you're a
health,
gamer. This isn't Madden, dude. You can't just like sim through
I
the season and he'll be just fine the next
I
year.
understand that. I understand that. But it's just so tough because with that talent, like you saw it on the Jets. He flew across the field. It did everything he was doing for Seattle, rushing the quarterback, doing all that at a high level. And then just injury bug, injury bug, injury bug, injury bug. I mean, shit, he came back this year after first 4 games. Monday Night Football against the Giants, gets a knee to the helmet or something. He's out for another 2 weeks. Tries to fight the physical trainer, and then dealing with that injury for the rest. Not the same injury,
It
but just
wasn't that. It was mainly the injury that he was coming back from.
yeah,
The one day that I listened to Seattle sports radio, Dave Wyman, who's on 710 ESPN, former Seahawks linebacker, does some pre and post game coverage on the radio side and in game color guy with Steve Rabel. And they said part of the problem with that injury is that he could get going and get up to full speed, but he couldn't stop. And you saw that in the first Niners game where guys in the backfield makes a cut on him and he's just still going downfield. He couldn't stop.
right,
Like it's that's the tough thing. And me and Scott that have been has been on here before, we talked ad nauseum about like CJ Pro Size, how he had a couple of big games, but the dude like broke his entire shoulder blade. Like that's
right,
freak injuries. You can't account for that. And it
right, and
sucks that
that's
it didn't work out. I didn't
yeah,
like how he conducted himself with the media this year. So I think that he definitely turned, but that's a guy that's been geared to be a star in the NFL
of
for so many
course,
years. And when you're seeing that slip through your fingers due to no fault of your own,
right.
it's a tough pill to
It's tough.
swallow.
It's really tough. And you know what? I'm in my heart of hearts. I'm glad I'm happy he's not here. I wish nothing but the best for him because I did like seeing him hit people. It was
It's a
great.
waste of talent. I'm happy he's not here, but hey, hope hope you have a great rest of your life, bud.
Exactly. Um,
Golly.
I just want somebody who's on the field, and I understand freak injuries happen all the time. I understand that. I mean, like let's take it to Kirk this year. Just one wrong step and his Achilles just bursts.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Right. Very
Like
terrible.
when I go wasted talent, you think of like Josh Gordon and the amount of times he went on
That's
that list, or the
that's
people that do
true.
stuff outside where they piss it away. Johnny Manziel, waste of talent. You can say that. When it comes to Jamal Adams, I don't think you can say that in that regards. But it
That's
was
fair.
wasted resources by the Seahawks based off of the production they
Right.
got for the money and
It,
capital that they spent.
it just I just want somebody who's on the field all the time, and with how Julian Love really played well this year in the opportunities. Sorry, English is hard, but that he was given. I mean, the dude bursted out of nowhere and made the Pro Bowl. Like I am excited for that future.
All right, let's roll over to the guys that have signed elsewhere. These guys were all free agents I went over. We already talked about Will Dissly, who was a cut. The first guy we're going to talk about is Damian Lewis, and holy moly, did guards get paid. The
Yes, they
Carolina
did.
Panthers shelled out some money. I think Damian Lewis 4 years, 53 mil is the top on that. They also signed Robert Hunt for 5 years, 100. mil.
Yeah.
It's just like that's a ton of money. And Damian Lewis had his ups and downs, and he definitely had his bright spots, but he also had some pretty low spots as well. And to get that type of money, it was always going to be too rich for the Seahawks blood to pay that.
Mm. And he gets
To
reunited with Dave Canales.
yeah, it's great.
So good for him.
Next guy I'm going to go with is a guy that I think we are all kind of hurt when we saw the numbers come out. We're a little shocked that the Seahawks weren't players at that. It's Jordan Brooks signed a
Oh,
3-year, $30 million deal with the Miami Dolphins. Great pickup for them, and it would have been fun to see what McDonald could unlock. And Patrick Queen going to the Steelers. That was a guy that was looked at. Okay, we don't have him. We're going to get Mike McDonald's guy, a guy that he turned into a great player that was always connected in Jordan Brooks because Jordan Brooks selected a pick before Patrick Queen, and everyone was upset that we didn't take Queen. And I think that over the course of their first contracts, I think that Jordan Brooks had better statistical numbers throughout. And he was a great player, and it was tough to see him go, especially when you looked at and still look at what this team has at the linebacker position, which is John Radigan.
yeah.
We're
I was
we're done.
hurt.
We're done. I talked about all the
Yeah,
linebackers.
I was hurt when I saw that number because it's like y'all couldn't give him $30 million.
$10 million a year on the top end. So
And it's like he has been Bobby Wagner 2.0, but better. It
it's
would
different.
seem.
It's different.
And this was a
When
dude that rushed back from an ACL tear
yeah,
to play, and legends of the team, KJ Wright. I would think we would call him a legend at this point, a Seahawk legend.
oh, you mean the 49ers linebacker coach?
Yes. Hey, big ups to him for getting a coaching job, though.
Big ups, KJ. Have fun
But
kicking our ass next year. Psych.
got him. But even KJ Wright was like, "Hey, man, don't rush back if you don't have to, right? Like, I understand you want to get that bag, but make sure your body's right so you can get that bag." And them not shelling out for that really hurt. And Miami now has a fantastic linebacking room from what it looks like. They also made some big signings there. So it's tough, especially when you have zeros. Yes, we're going to hit the second wave and all that, but you could have avoided some of this and not probably shelled out as much for some of these guys. I mean, Patrick Queen went for more, I think,
He did.
and I think it was a 3-year deal as well.
Yeah,
So
3-year, 45, I think.
and it's crazy because Jordan Brooks puts up crazy numbers during the year. So that one hurt a lot.
Next guy, this was probably the biggest shock that I saw. It was Colby Parkinson getting a 3-year deal. I think clocking in at about 18 mil plus. And this is a guy that his role has expanded in his first 4 years with the Seahawks, but last year was his best statistical year where I think he clocked in with a couple hundred yards receiving and 2 tutties. And he's coming out of college, he was seen as a pure pass catcher with the 6'7" frame, but he's actually turned out to be a pretty competent blocker. And he ends up going to the Rams, just a guy to go there with Tyler Higbee.
Yeah.
A little rough, but big ups to him. I think that was a guy that Schneider was looking at bringing back and then was kind of surprised by the higher price tag on that one.
Yeah.
Next guy is a guy that I think we all wanted back based on the glimpses that we saw. But Drew Lock goes to the New York Giants on a 1-year, $5 million deal, which is a $500,000 bump. He's got some incentives that could take it a little bit higher, but with the injury proclivity to Daniel Jones, and even this year when he was healthy, they weren't playing very good ball. So I think this gives him a better opportunity to become a starter, or at least a bridge starter in the NFL. And I don't think he necessarily had that as well. It was crazy because all you heard was Schneider and McDonald dropping Drew Lock's name all offseason. So not getting him back, I could have seen him trying to go after like a 3-year, $25 million deal. Like Gardner Minshew got a 2-year 25. I could have seen Locke looking more at a 3-year 25 because he's got flashes, and if he can turn over to quote a good former co-host of mine on Fix Your Franchise Dirty, a gunslinger. I think that if he turns down the turnovers a little bit more, that he could be a highly effective quarterback. And you saw that a little bit even in the loss to the 49ers, because it was a short week of practice for him, because Gino went down late in the week in practice for really a walkthrough and his preparation up to that point. He got out of a lot of things. No turnovers
Yeah,
in that game, I don't think, or maybe it was one late, but he didn't get sacked in that game either.
right. I was shocked to see Drew Lock, but it also raised some interest in my head, and I won't talk about those today because we're not talking about that.
Great.
And as you said, the potential was there, and you know, as you said, the 49ers game, he looked really good with
He looked
the
better
tool.
in the Eagles game
Well,
that
of
we
course he
won.
did. Of course he did.
But
But
I thought that he showed glimpses against, granted, the Eagles were kind of on a downturn at that point. Their
yeah,
defense was kind of imploding, but he did well against the 49ers that were the NFC Super Bowl participant.
right. And so it was just it was shocking to see.
Last guy, I don't think we were super shocked to see it happen. It was kind of foreshadowed out there that maybe Bobby Wagner wouldn't have a spot on this team. I thought that if you could bring him back at a more modest number, like a 4 or 5 mil, and have him be an early down linebacker, that he could have been very useful to this team still, as you saw last year by him racking up the tackles still. But he reunites with Dan Quinn, and the Washington Commanders, gets a 1 year, $8.5 million deal. And nothing but class by Bobby on the way out. Today, he tweeted out, he goes, "Hey, Seattle, we've been through this dance before. It's nothing but love until I see you again." Because that guy's going to be a Seahawks Hall of Famer. He's going to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's going to be a Ring of Honor guy for the Seahawks, and he's going to be a Hall of Fame member in Canton, rocking a
Yes,
Seahawks jersey.
yes. Am I shocked it happened? No. But the one thing I'm glad that didn't happen this time, and I know it was only a 1 year deal to begin with, I'm just happy he wasn't cut because the last time was bullshit. Sorry for dropping so many curses,
That's
but
the E on this episode. We're there.
uh,
So why
you
don't
know,
we go to the re-sign / extended players? I'm going to kind of work my way from lower profile to higher profile here. The first guy we're going to talk about is Artie Burns. Key piece for us last year. He's a
I
pretty solid
like
special
that one.
teamer for us. Filled in a little bit at nickel cornerback, which he hadn't played prior to this season,
He
filling in for
performed.
Spoon. And I think he's just a good depth piece. I think with this entire secondary that you saw rolled out that last year, even with that Quandre Diggs, the ups and downs that you saw, the secondary was the best part of this team last year
Mm-hmm.
defensively. And I think that bringing Artie Burns back, he's a veteran. This will be his third 1 year deal with the Seahawks, and get signed earlier this year than he did last year. I don't mind it. He's going to be fighting for a roster spot most likely, but when you lose the likes of DJ Dallas and them cutting Nick Ballore, there's a lot of special team snaps that are going to come. Granted, he's a different body type than that, but I expect him to be a heavy contributor on the special teams.
Yeah, I saw that today and I was like, huh, I like that. I really do. Because the times I did see him during
Solid.
like defensive plays, right? He was there. He was step for step with guys. He had some pass breakups. I liked what I saw and bringing him back. Hell yeah, dude. Let's run it back.
Next guy was announced. He was not a tendered a restricted free agent deal because they worked out an extension. Haven't seen the numbers on it, but it's Darrell Taylor. And this is a guy where we've been, I think last year he was a guy who said, no, I don't think he's going to be on this team. But it's going to be interesting to see. Mike McDonald saw enough on film to say, yes, I do want him on this team, because they could have let him walk or put a restricted free agent tag on him, which would have likely brought him back at a higher cap number. But I think that he saw some stuff to prove. And I think that bringing in a new defensive coordinator that has had good success with edge rushers in his time with the Ravens, I think that this has the ability to be a bigger move, but it's actually probably the most shocking one that I saw the Seahawks make on bringing someone back or
Right.
bringing someone in.
I to here I was during the season I was somewhat praising Darrell Taylor. You were like,
Yeah, I think that he's done the best. I haven't seen him do anything, but I think it's the best.
exactly. Uh,
Great breakdown earlier
it
this
was
week.
shocking because coming out right, he had talent. He really did, and Pete just never got it out of him, I guess.
I think they did get it out of him. His rookie year didn't play that whole year because of the infection from surgery in college. Came back that next year. I think he had like 4 consecutive games with the sack, and then got absolutely pancake turned over, neck snapped back against the Steelers, and just wasn't the same after that. And then you
Yeah.
saw bits and pieces where he ebbed and flowed, where sacks come in bunches. You talk about power hitters in baseball that the home run ball comes in bunches. Well, sacks come in bunches for Darrell Taylor, but you see extended periods of time where
There's no
it
production
doesn't
at
seem like
all.
he's on the field.
Right.
So
And he's locking in there at the right end, Like it's tough to see, but like you said, let's hope Coach Matt gets something out of him
I don't know
because
how many years the deal is too,
right. Right.
and what those numbers come in. But a person that we do know numbers for, Noah Fant resigns back with Seahawks, 2-year, $21.5 million deal. That clocks him in at the 12th highest paid tight end in the league. And I was talking to some people
Oh,
earlier
that's
this week.
insane.
I mean, there's not really that there's not a ton of guys I would say are more complete, but here's what I'm going to say. I said this earlier in the week, and I think it's a great point. Noah Fant, coming out of college, was from Iowa, played with TJ Hawkinson. They were both taken in the first round. And Noah Fant, you could see the physicality he has, the soft hands he has, and the athleticism he has. You look at Noah Fant has everything except
Right.
production in the pass game. And it's crazy to think about because you look at the profile, you look at all the tools. It'll be interesting to see. We talked about this right before the podcast, but with Ryan Grubb coming in, what he was able to do more so with Jack Westover, and the year prior, Devin Culp and Jack Westover were a little bit more combo. Culp didn't do as much for the Huskies this last year, but they do script plays for the tight end. There's tight end screens that were thrown out there, being able to be the late leaker and finding those open zones. There were a ton of times where Westover was that guy. You've got Noah Fant, who's a bigger physical presence and probably has similar hands or better hands than Westover, especially with his time in the NFL. So it'll be really interesting to see how they're able to utilize him more to make that money make sense. Because when you looked at some of these other guys, that's Colby Parkinson money esque, but one less year. So
Right.
it'll be interesting to see because Mike McDonald has to like him. Ryan Grubb has to like him for him to come back, because this was
Right.
the guy that I think we all thought out of the 3 tight ends that were
He
on the
wasn't
team
coming
at the end
back.
of the year that he was probably the least likely to be back. And
Right.
he's the only guy that's here. So
And I know you weren't high on going to stats for this one, but I mean, 32 catches for 414 and this many touchdowns? Zero? And he got 21 and a half mil? To me, that's wild. Like, I understand, like you said, that like how complete he is, but for that bad of a season for a tight end to get that much money, like this market's stupid.
but the other thing is, when you really look at it, with probably the other top tight end on the market was Dalton Schultz, but he ends up signing an extension before free agency starts with the Houston Texans. There wasn't a lot of guys out there
No,
that you could make that case for. And you've got to have a guy that you feel good about being able to compete in 2 phases of the game and not just relying on the draft. So I do like this play. We'll get to some other moves that were made today or yesterday, and when we get to the outside guys, but it's an interesting thing. It's not something that we expected. The big money deal, Leonard Williams, big cat coming back. He was,
yeah,
when he joined the team, you kind of had Jaron Reed was probably the top inside outside defensive lineman, especially after Chinny and Wosu went down. You had Boye Mafe had that run of sack streak and playing a little bit more complete. But Leonard Williams was definitely your best defensive lineman down the stretch. And he gets rewarded. And the crazy thing is, yes, he's older than when he signed his first contract. But when you looked at some of the numbers like Christian Wilkins got for a
we got
guy
to
that's a
steal.
similar profile, yes, he is younger. But with what you get in Leonard Williams, he only got like a $500,000 a year raise from his last contract that he signed with the Giants. So I think that you're actually getting pretty decent value on that deal. I think that this is a guy who played at USC. I think Pete Carroll always wanted Leonard Williams, and he finally got him. And I think that John also wanted him. He could see how complete he is as a player, how he can be disruptive in the pass rush game, but also be fairly stout against the run. I think this is a guy that helps anchor that, and I expect to see an uptick with Draymond Jones this year, especially with McDonald being in the house, and really hopefully turning into a little bit more of a terror between those two.
Yeah, I love the Big Cat sighting. Loved it. I'm here for every second of it. The dude flew back from Japan just to get the deal done. Love to see that out of a player. The big thing I was saying coming into this free agency period is that's your number one priority outside of Jordan Brooks, right? Because I think
Well, I
that I
think
said
that the money and when the deal was struck, I think that was the Seahawks' number one priority.
right, of course, but those two guys were my priority list, right? It was Leonard Williams because you gave up a second round pick for him. You don't trade a second round pick, not make the playoffs, and let him walk.
Yeah, you do. We did it before.
I
Sheldon
know we have.
Richardson,
Well, right. But
those
now,
pesky Jets.
yeah. So now you resign Big Cat. And oh man, let him and Jaron Reed cook this year. I am so stoked to see those two for a full year. Ah, let people run on them. They're just gonna get stuck.
We did last year. So let's don't tell people to do it just yet. I want to see the proof in the pudding a little bit before you tell people to run all over us. I want to see it in person. All right, now we're going to go to the outside free agents that we have signed. I'll kind of start from work my way up. First guy we're going to talk about is Pharaoh Brown, tight end, played for New England last year, former undrafted free agent out of the University of Oregon. I believe he's 29 years old. He actually had one touchdown catch last year and 100, just under 200 yards. I
208
believe
yards.
it wasn't too crazy off from Will Disley, and his blocking numbers put him. I think he was Pro Football Focus's ninth best pass blocking tight end. So I think that bringing that in, the money that I saw, it'll be interesting when you see all these contracts because you see the numbers and they're eye catching right off the bat, and then it kind of you look at the guaranteed money. That's what it's about, right? Said he's clocking in at 3 mil, which is pretty good money for a guy that profiles as a true blocking tight end or potentially a number 3 tight end. So it'll be interesting to see what those numbers look like. But you needed another guy on the roster, and this guy that has NFL experience and has played pretty well for the Patriots last year, even though he's not a prolific pass catcher. The upside on having him come in and be more of a blocking type tight end is of good value to this team.
Right. I agree. I mean, he's not terrible. So like it. They need to get tight ends on the roster.
The next guy, we're going to talk about a couple of homecomings here. We'll talk about the professional homecoming, and that is Don't You Wanna Fanta Fanta. We signed 2 Fants this offseason in Noah Fant and George Fant. George Fant coming back, the elusive tight end slash tackle for your Seattle Seahawks. And I like this deal. He signed a big deal with the Jets. Didn't really pan out. There were some injury concerns that happened there, kind of thrown in the fire. But what I do like about this is he gives you more talent than Stone Forsyth and than Jake Kern. So I like that. And especially with Abe Lucas getting the knee procedure in the offseason and missing a good chunk of time due to the knee, I think that he gives you a lot of value as a proven swing tackle. He's played left tackle, he's played right tackle. If Charles Cross goes out for a game or two, I feel confident in George Fant when healthy playing left tackle.
Yes.
He did
When
it
healthy, he was great.
did it for Dwayne Brown. And then he's also played right tackle. So if you're going to load management a little bit with Abe Lucas if needed, I like it. It's
Yeah.
not a splashy play, but I do like guys that we had an affinity for at one point to be able to come back and hopefully remind us why we like them so much.
as you said, when healthy, dude, I love George Finn. I remember how just athletic he was at that.
Wearing
And
the lineman number. I'm declaring eligible.
and whenever he went down, we were just like, damn it. And it was always the roulette of linemen that we're gonna throw out there. But glad he's back. You do love a good homecoming, and probably, one of your favorite homecomings is coming up.
Speaking of homecomings, we got a former Husky coming back, and that is Nick Harris. Played guard and center for the Huskies for 4 years. Played 3 years under Scott Huff, the Seahawks, now offensive line coach. And this is a guy that started at center. It was an injury fill in, played pretty well. He's got very good pass blocking grades. He also has filled in at left tackle in the NFL, which he didn't even do in college. He's not doesn't really have the size profile to do that. But this is this year's Evan Brown. He's going to compete with Oluwatimi for the starting center job. If he doesn't win that, I could see him potentially winning a job over Anthony Bradford as well. I think he's got that center guard versatility. So even with the numbers that were coming in at about $3 million for a guy that's had some success in this league, missed 1 year due to injury and was the backup to former Seahawk Ethan Posick at the center position for the Browns. This is a guy that filled in pretty well when the Browns had a pretty damn good offensive line before Posick got over there. And this is a guy that was a phenomenal player for the Huskies. And I think that with his familiarity with Scott Huff and wanting to get back to this area, I think this is a smart play because he gives you options on the interior. When you look at Phil Haynes is still out there, Evan Brown is still out there, and Damian Lewis signs a deal that was way out of the realm. Nick Harris
Bonkers.
gives you a guy that someone on your coaching staff knows very well and has starting experience on what was at the time the top line in the league, where he filled in at center very well for them.
Yeah, I think Oluwatimi is going to be our starter this year. So I think that he's going to bump to guard. I really think that's the case because I think it's Timmy's time. It's year two.
Timmy!
Timmy time. Uh, I liked what I
Tim the
saw out
Tool
of
Man
him.
Taylor.
Yeah,
Home
dude.
improvement.
I did like what I saw from him last year when he did have to fill in. So I could see him winning over Anthony Bradford because with Anthony Bradford, you get this 50-50 play. He's either going to be decent or he's not good.
He was also a rookie.
I understand that. I
So,
understand that. But I think he needs a little bit more development when it comes to that. So I think you're going to go with the more seasoned guy.
all right. Probably the most high profile guy. Still haven't seen the details on this, but it was a guy that was cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Actually, in the 2 years that he was a starter for them, played extremely well over the last 2 years. He clocked in with 217 tackles, logged a couple of sacks, and had 5 interceptions over the course of the last 2 years. And that is Rayshawn Jenkins. He's a guy that does not count against compensatory picks. He is not a guy that was in that scrum. They kind of had him in over the weekend. So when you saw last year, you had uh, Julian Love come in for a visit, and he was signed shortly after, and it was kind of a shock. But I was kind of holding out hope that they might be able to work something out with Quandre and bring him back. Like I talked earlier, I think that he could be fun with this team. But what you look at with this group of players, Rayshawn Jenkins, I think, does better over the top. I think with Julian Love, he he's a he's had more experience playing strong safety, especially last year, and playing, box corner, slot corner. So having him in the box is something that I like. So having a guy that is more of a true free safety instead of trying to bring in a strong safety to this team, I think is smart. And when you look at this secondary, the only guy besides Rayshawn Jenkins that's on really a second deal, like an actual good deal, is Julian Love. Artie Burns, yes, he's there, but basically everyone else was still on their rookie or still is on their rookie contracts. Having a guy that's a little bit older that has had success in this league, I don't think is bad in a position group.
Right. I liked it. I did see a report earlier in the week that he had scheduled visits with us and the 49ers, and I'm just glad he didn't go to the 49ers.
Are we all? Well, that's what the Seahawks have done so far. There's still free agents out there. And Kane, why don't you talk to us about a couple of guys who you would like the Seahawks to target?
So one guy that I think that they should bring back, honestly, is Devin Bush. Right, the talent's there, right? The
The
talent is,
athleticism isn't there from when he was drafted due to injury, but he flashed in a few games last year.
he
And he's
did.
a solid special teamer too.
And here's the big thing: you could probably sign him on a 2 to 3 year deal right now for
Or
cheap,
another one
cheap,
year or another 1 year prove it type.
because the dude is 25 years old. 25 years old. That's nuts. And with that, as you said earlier, with Mike McDonald's system, I could see him thrive, right? Because before the injury happened, Tomlin turned him into kind of a crazy monster his rookie year.
That was his only healthy year though.
I
That
know.
was really his big year.
Right. And then it just kept dipping and dipping because the injury bug, and
Waste of talent. Just kidding.
he's 25, not almost 30. All right.
All
I'm
right, who
almost
else you got?
30 and I'm a waste of talent. All right.
Wow, here we go. Let's talk
uh,
about hopefully not a waste of talent. Kane, who is your next target?
Devin White is my next target. And that dude has been nothing but great on that Tampa Bay defense. And I just would love to have this guy here. He can cover dudes, he can fill the hole. He's basically what you want in a linebacker, especially in the middle there. And I think it would be a good kind of person to turn over the roster to, you know what I mean? Like the defense too. And let that big old C on his chest at some point. But Devin White is an absolute monster. That's who I would
And
really
he's
like
only
to see.
26.
It says 25 right here.
I think 26 during the next league year.
Right. Okay. Well, those are my two because this team needs linebackers. Coach Red, who are your free agent picks?
I have four targets. Three of them are linebackers. So you want linebackers? I'll bring you some linebackers. First guy is a guy that was cut today by the Ravens, and that is Tyus Bowser. This is a guy that was up and coming, signed the extension after his rookie deal, and this was a guy back in Fix Your Franchise that I had keyed up for a lot of players because I thought he was a young and upcoming player. Another guy that was hit with the injury bug, really hasn't played much in the last 2 years, but is familiar with Mike McDonald and has been around him for years. So I guarantee that he's looking for a 1 year prove it bounce back type of deal. And if there's one guy that knows him intimately, it's Mike McDonald. So it'll be interesting to see if there is interest, especially from the Seahawks. I think there
there's
will be from Tyus Bowser, but will the Seahawks be interested as
there's
well?
there's got to be a reunion somewhere for Coach Mack. There has to be.
Perfect. Let me talk about my next target,
Oh,
and that
go ahead.
is Kevin Zeitler, guard,
Yep.
formerly from the Baltimore
Baltimore
Ravens.
Ravens. I did see that actually today. I was like, oh, that wouldn't be too terrible, would it?
34 years old, but he's a guy that was extremely good for the Bengals and has been extremely good for the Ravens. And when you look at this team as a whole, we talked about Nick Harris. Nick Harris is just out of first contract. This is a guy that's been around the league, and especially when it comes to linemen. Lineman is a brotherhood, and having that father figure kind of coach on the field, that's what you get in Kevin Zeitler. He is older. He's not going to command the dollars that you saw go out to Hunt and to Lewis and to all these other guards that were getting bananas money.
Yep.
Kevin Zeitler is a guy that's going to clock in at probably maxing out at 8.5 mil for a 1 year deal, and that's probably maxed out with incentives. This is a guy that I would love to have just in the room.
Yeah. I mean, you saw with you had Jason Peters last year, kind of like all that experience though,
Yes.
right? All the experience. And that would be like Like another guy would be like a Tyron Smith, but I think he's worth too much money,
You need
right?
tackle.
I understand that, but you can move things around. Um, but just having the knowledge there, right? And then who was the guy? Dwayne Brown, right? We had him in there with the knowledge, and that's just kind of the big thing that you kind of need because this offensive line is young,
Yes, very,
really young.
very young. And I think this would be a good key pickup. All right, the next guy, I know I said linebacker, but I think he's often been categorized as a defensive weapon.
Okay.
Isaiah Simmons.
Oh yeah.
So, Isaiah Simmons, I think that he could kind of fill that be all do all that Mike McDonald had with Kyle Hamilton a little bit.
Question, Coach Red.
Yes. What's your
Uh,
question?
was that the one who was drafted by the Cardinals and traded to the Giants?
That is correct.
I thought you said Justin Simmons. Okay, no,
No.
I'm here for Isaiah Simmons. That dude's a freak.
So he's a freak athlete. When you looked at his time with the Arizona Cardinals, that was under the Cliff Kingsbury regime. I think he just really liked shiny toys. You saw by his house and stuff like that. And the promise of
Yeah.
him being able to do anything on the football field was key. Once they made the coaching change, they shipped him out to the Giants, which I thought was a good deal for the Giants. The Giants were coming off a very impressive defensive year, but there was big struggles between Wake Martindale and Brian Dable, and you don't know how that really bled over to because you saw some weeks where the Giants played great, and you saw other weeks where the Giants were absolutely terrible. Give me a guy that's a weapon. This is a guy that has not lived up to the billing to his draft status. And this is a guy that I do think can be one of those prove it type of guys. And potentially, like Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill a little bit when they signed them for modest deals the first year, then brought him back at modest deals for their production because the Seahawks took a chance on him when other people weren't.
Right.
Cliff Averill I thought signed at a fair but 1 year deal when we first signed him. I go, that's crazy. But the production this guy's had, Michael Bennett, you knew he was an undrafted free agent by the Seahawks, had a little bit of success with the Bucks, and those guys come back. I think that Isaiah Simmons fits that mold of a guy that he's been at two different places, but you've seen the struggles that the teams or the coaching staffs had at those places. Bringing in with the new staff with a guy that is a defensive minded guy as your head coach, I think would be very good for him because at his last two
Mm-hmm.
spots, those were offensive head coaches.
And he's also 25 years old. I thought he was way older because I've just heard his name so much.
Speaking of 25-year-olds, this is a guy that
Oh.
I think super under the radar because I found out about him through X/Twitter. And it is Bills linebacker Tyrell Dodson. This is a guy that filled in for Matt Milano last year. Pro Football Focus loves this guy. I think he was their 6th overall rated linebacker, like stack linebacker. He profiles a
Nice.
little bit more as a coverage guy. This is a guy that's worked his way into a starting role last year due to injury. Clocked in last year with 74 tackles, 2.5 sacks, a couple of passes defended. But this guy is a guy that comes out and has good coverage skills. A guy that I wanted them to go after was Jeremy Chin, who's been that weapon. Another guy like Bush, when you talked about him, how he had a phenomenal rookie year, kind of bit by the injury bug, and really never developed in what you thought you wanted to be. Well, Dotson's similar to that in that role, where he is going to be that coverage linebacker, that linebacker that's dropping into coverage. He's not going to be that guy in the middle calling the plays like you would have with potentially an Isaiah Simmons or
Mm.
Devin Bush coming back or Devin White coming in. But I think that Dotson is a guy that the metrics say that he's a pretty darn good football player. And he's 25 years old. He's a guy that hopefully is coming into his own a little bit more. And you want to know what is pretty paramount for NFL teams?
What's
To
that?
have good players on their team.
Yeah.
Have good players on your team, it usually turns out a little bit better than when you don't have good players on your team.
I don't think any greater words have ever been said. Great to you, Coach Red.
Yep.
Great to you.
Well, that's going to wrap up our first episode back.
Yeah.
But before you close out of this internet browser, close down your phone, turn it off, get out of your car, go ahead out, go give us a follow. You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, on X at The Real Coach Red, on Instagram at @the_Coach Red, TikTok before it's fully banned in the US and A by Congress at The Real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. Cain, where you at?
You can find me over on Twitter at Kane2406, on YouTube at Kane06, TikTok Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
And as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.